Roger Alden Moser. Born in Toledo, Ohio, they tell me. I say that because I left at a very early age, a few months, and grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. I went to Purdue University, which is in Lafayette, Indiana. Got a job in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, with Ethel Corporation, and lived here for a while. Was drafted, and after a year or so, got married to Marcia, of course, and so then got drafted and went through basic in Kansas at Fort Riley. Then went to the development detachment in Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. And Marcia was with me there. We were there, had our first child, Andrea, and then moved back to Baton Rouge. I guess we were here about 2 years, and they asked me to take a new job in Houston, Texas, which I did. Spent 2 years in Houston, Texas at our plant, and then they asked me to come back to Baton Rouge, which I did. And basically, we've been here ever since in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Well, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a college graduate. I am a chemical engineer. I'm a citizen of a very important country. And so I try to be a good citizen, I try to be a good employee, good engineer, get involved in the community, get involved in church, spend a lot of time with our kids, which started with Andrea but moved on to Kenneth and then to Phil, and spent a lot of time with those children and valued it greatly. One of the high points of my life is being a husband, a father, a family man. And I guess that kind of sums it up. Well, after public schools in Cleveland, Ohio, went to Purdue, as I said. While I was then working at Ethel, Ethel sent me to the management school at Louisiana State University. That was a summer program for 3 summers. And then later on sent me to Massachusetts Institute of Technology up in Boston. And I spent a 9-week course in what they called a senior management course at MIT. Well, my grandparents, I guess, grew up as farmers, and they were Mennonites, so the church was important to them. And I hardly met them or knew them. Of course, back then people died more at younger ages than they do today. And so I was very young, when my grandparents disappeared from the scene. I hardly knew my grandpa. My grandmother, I knew a bit, and she was a lively person. Grandpa was sick, I guess, at the time of my earliest but also latest recollection. I think they had as you tended to have at that time, lots of kids in the family, and we had a very nice family reunion this past year, up in Orrville, Ohio, and a lot of folks came to it, and it was kind of the sense of, hey, there's some family cohesiveness, although we haven't seen one another for decades. a lot of these people I haven't seen in 50 years. But there is this family connectiveness, and people care about their background, and I think to a person they're kind of proud of that background. As I recall, Grandpa walked across a significant part of Europe to get to a boat to come to the US of A. And so they were Mennonites, and the Mennonites were not welcome in Europe. And they could have said, well, I'm not going to be a Mennonite anymore, but that's not what they did. They said, I'm out of here. We got to have freedom. So I think that's in our genes somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's when we came back from Houston. That's where we lived for a couple of years, maybe more than a couple. And that's where a lot of our kids growing up took place. Oh, I remembered neighbors that bothered me in various ways. The neighbor next door should have known better, but when her child would act up, she would say, "You better straighten out, or Mr. Moser is going to take his belt off and whack you." Well, now, I wasn't about to take my belt off, and it wasn't my place to discipline her child, and I thought that was terrible judgment. And meanwhile, across the street, 5 boys lived, and I remember one event where one of them was bothering Andrea to the point that I tore out of the house and chased him down till he ran out of energy and fell down on the ground. And then it didn't touch him. I said, okay, now, don't do that anymore. And we started, and it never happened again. And we started back, and about that time his mom arrived. Well, of course, I hadn't touched the child, but I pushed him to the point that he decided he wasn't going to run anymore. So, but those events go on in neighborhoods. I can't think of any other, although I'm sure there were many. They were just wonderful parents. They were strong, dedicated, cared about us deeply, cared about our family, cared about their brothers and sisters scattered around Ohio. Never made any promise that they didn't fulfill. So I came away with the experience that you could take to the bank, as the saying goes. If mom said it or dad said it, take it to the bank. That's the way it's going to be. And that's incredible if you can always trust, and always trust that whatever comes forth out of caring about you and what's best for you. So they were just wonderful parents, totally reliable, totally honorable. Just that he was a great human being. And one of the wonderful aspects of that was when he retired, they had a special party and a special going away. And the comments boiled down to saying, this was one fine human being.
What did you admire most about your mom?
Well, it was a different time in the world. Mom didn't have a career other than raising us kids and taking care of the household and walking to the store to shop and this kind of thing, because we didn't have all the conveniences we have today. But she loved Dad, and she was totally faithful to him and totally faithful to us kids and went out of her way to take care of us. And again, that was, at that time, it was not unusual to be sick at home with whooping cough or this disease or that disease or the other disease. And being a mom and taking care of kids was a full-time job back then. And she did it well. And meanwhile, she was totally supportive of Dad, helpful to Dad, loved Dad, and helped him have a complete positive life, I think. Well, I guess I started out mowing lawns. I guess everybody does. And then, and raking leaves. And then paper route. I had a paper route for a while. And delivered the paper each morning before going to school. And one of our jobs also was going around and collecting for the papers we delivered. And that was always a bit of a chore. I set pins in the bowling alley for a lot of years when I was going to high school and college. And I would jump lanes, which meant I would be tending two adjacent lanes. So you'd take care of these pins, and then these pins, and then these pins, and then these pins. I stocked a drugstore. At one point, my job was to dust all the shelves and put stock on the shelves, make sure the goods were there in each case. While I was at Purdue, I washed dishes for a while. I also went around the campus putting stickers on new property. In other words, some part of this vast Purdue campus would buy this, that, or the other. And so then down would come a list of these things. And so the chemical engineering department bought 4 tables, and it would be my job to go to that place and put a sticker on that saying this belongs to Purdue University. So I did that for a while. And then I worked in the Cleveland Twist Drill making drill bits. So this was running lathes, milling machines to grind the flutes in the drills. Then one summer when I had to go to school for half the year in a course called Unit Operations that was only given during the summer, I got back to Cleveland with half the summer gone, and I got a job with Clorox. And in this case, it was packaging Clorox. It was storing it and then loading trucks or trains with the right number of this size bottle and this size bottle and this size bottle. I think those are the jobs that I had. I always had a job of some description going through high school and college. And of course, ever since then, I worked at Ethel Corporation, spent 42 years working for Ethel Corporation. They were nice enough that when I was drafted from Ethel, they said, you'll have a job when you come back, and we'll count those 2 years as years of service with our company. So 42 years, 40 of them with Ethel per se, 2 years in the Army with significant help from Ethel Corporation, which was very thoughtful. I then retired. I ran for school board, and at age 66 or whatever I was at that time, I wasn't trying to get on the political ladder. I was trying to fix a broken system, and that's what we had in Baton Rouge, was a broken school system. And so I spent 12 years on the school board. I don't know that that was a job, But on the other hand, it's not something that I approached as anything but a job of trying to build a system that was going to be financially sustainable, going to have facilities that were reasonable for the kids in terms of buses that weren't decrepit and in terms of schools that weren't falling down. And so I worked very hard on the school board. I guess since that time, I've been on the boards of various kinds of organizations. Our Lady of Lake Hospital for 9 years, Franciscan Missionaries of Our Lady, which is the organization that ran both that hospital and 3 others for 9 years. I was on the Mary Bird Perkins board for 2 years. I was on the Chamber of Commerce in Baton Rouge, on the board for several years and chairman of the board for a year. I was on the Boy Scout board and chairman of the board for a year. So I've been involved in, not casually, but rather significantly, Teach for America. Been on that board for many years. And touched other school-related organizations like Volunteers in Public Schools and Academic Distinction Fund. I was on the initial board that got that one started. So I've spent a fair amount of time in those kinds of activities, trying to make something happen in this community. I guess very early on, I was, then I suppose one other I would mention, when governors in southern states were standing up in the schoolhouse door and saying, we will not integrate, we'll shut down this school before we'll obey the Supreme Court decision. I was on the board of an organization called Open, and our message was keep the schools open. Don't shut them down. Don't do something silly, which is what we thought these other people were doing. We thought that all they were going to do was shut down the schools for some weeks, months, or years, and have kids that aren't getting the education they deserve, and that cause a lot of turmoil, and end up at the same place that they had to end up. So Open was the organization, and that was our mantra, that was our goal, keep them open. And thank God we did. We didn't shut, our leadership here in the state didn't shut any of them down over segregation. What do I live for? Well, at this stage, I live as much as anything, I think, for my family and for my country. I try to do whatever I can that would help the family, and then the community and the country. Try to vote responsibly, try to understand the issues, try to not get bogged down in some of the silliness that goes on, and
Great books.
trying to focus on what's important.
Great books.
Great books. Well, yeah. Well, that's early on. That was a special activity, and I don't know that it goes on anymore. But there was a time when there was a group that would get together, and they'd all read the same book. It would be one of the great books, and then they would get together for a discussion of that. And so I did that for 3 or 4 years. And then got involved in going up to Angola, the state prison, and leading a group in doing the same thing up there. That is, we'd get the books available to the prisoners. Some of them would read them, some of them wouldn't. And then we'd go up there and sit down once a month and have a discussion group on that book. So, that was another activity from the past. I never wanted to be a ski instructor or a ski bump. I flew gliders when I was at Purdue. We had a glider club. And I always thought at the time that I'll probably do more of that as the years go by. I just never got around to it. Part of the reason was the chemical business was just exploding, not in terms of boom, 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 but in terms of growth, in terms of new products, new technologies, and it was just kind of all-consuming. All the time I had to put into things, I was happy to put into the chemical world. I guess I knew enough about flying to know that you really ought to know what you're doing, or you could hurt somebody. And so I early on said, I'm not going to be a half-baked flyer. Partly, hey, things happen. I got a family. I want to take care of the family. So, I guess single-minded, I want to understand the chemical business and make some things happen in that business, and understand what's going on, and not get lured into the silly side of the business, which is part of all businesses. But to give you an example, making ethanol and putting it in gasoline is a fool's errand. And the notion of spending time on that kind of stuff just never made sense to me. So part of the goal is to figure out what matters and spend your time on what matters, and not get bogged down in what is pure silliness from the standpoint of the economics, from the standpoint of energy efficiency, from the standpoint of the overall societal benefit. It's sheer stupidity. And we've got some other things like that. So it's worth knowing enough that you don't get bogged down in the wrong stuff. Trying to live an unselfish life. Religion is an important part of it. I'd like to focus on what we're trying to achieve, and is the goal something that you're proud of. For instance, I could never work in the gambling industry. I couldn't work in the alcohol distribution industry. So I would have to work in an area where I thought whatever was being done was a contribution. And there's an interesting way of thinking about this, but I never spent any time thinking about what was I making, what was my income. We were fortunate enough to have enough income. We didn't need to worry about that. But I never paid any attention to that side of the equation. Turns out that takes care of itself. If you're doing a good job and a job worth doing, somehow the pay is going to be there, the benefits are going to be there, and so don't ever take a job, for instance, making the point in an inverse fashion, don't ever take a job because that's the highest paying job around, if it isn't something that in your heart of hearts you're proud of. And then if you're really good at what you're doing, things just seem to take care of themselves. Well, I guess number one achievement is a happy marriage and I think a happy extended family. As a company, we brought a reasonable number of new technologies into the world in the insecticide, herbicide, pesticide area, in the pharmaceutical area, in the synthetic detergent world, in the making of silicon, actually we made polysilicon, which is converted into chips. So we made the extremely pure form of silicon, brand new process, the most energy efficient in the world. And this was, I guess, 20 years ago now, still is. But anyway, we brought some technologies into the world and into the marketplace that provided people with products they didn't used to have. Typically not an end product, but rather an intermediate along the way. And so some of the biggest companies in the world would look to us to say, can you make this molecule, which we're going to use to make this kind of product? And so a reasonable number of times we were able to say, yes, we can. We can do it better than you can do it yourself, and we can do it better than anybody else. And we'll prove it by the contract that we write. And so in several dozen cases, we had contracts that spanned 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years, where we had a relationship going that achieved something special for us and for our customer. And we always approached that on the basis that for us to succeed, he has to succeed. So let's do everything we can, not just to make this the greatest product we've got, but to help him or her make the end product the greatest product, so that it'll be around 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And we had some darn good successes in that area. I guess as I was retiring, we were working on something called metallocenes. And the simple way to think about metallocenes is they're part of a catalyst system that makes it impossible to open a plastic package. Used to be, you could stretch it, this, that, and the other. We can make it about as tough as you want to make it, or we can contribute to folks who want to do that. And so I'm being facetious in a sense, but the incredible packaging that was available, incredible strength that's available in very thin films comes about from some chemistry that we were involved in from the early days. Well, Harry Truman, on one end, the national figure, I've always thought he was great. I thought it at the time when folks weren't so sure about that, and I sure think it today. At Evo Corporation, I was pleased to work with several people that were very special. Bim Gotro was one, Andy Wickman was one, Wayne Davis was one, Jim Gill was one, A.B. Horn was one. On the world scene, I thought Margaret Thatcher was special in the UK. I thought that the folks that, Marshall, for instance, and Eisenhower, along with Truman, that came out of World War II, helped shape the world differently than it otherwise would have been. I've always been convinced that Churchill was a great man in England. Of course, I'm incredibly impressed by our our forefathers, and that includes the folks that wrote the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and the early laws of this land, but also Abe Lincoln and all that he did. Of course, the Gandhis of the world, the Mother Teresa's of the world, or something special. A guy named Schweitzer down in Africa that changed things. We've been blessed with lots of incredible people who have, well, Martin Luther King made incredible changes in the world. And those are the ones that come to mind at the moment, but there are lots of others out there that just done remarkable things. Perseverance, optimism, blessed with God-given good health, wonderful family to grow with and learn from. I think an ability to focus on the longer term as against easy in, easy out. So I try to look over a span of time and trying to evaluate what something is all about, and does it make sense, and should we pursue it. I'm very impatient. I'm sure I've got lots of other ones, but that comes to the top of the list. When, as I look back over things, I can think of myself as a control freak. In other words, I want to control all aspects of something or other. And there's a plus to that, but you can overdo it. And sometimes I overdo it, I'm sure. Well, to be involved in worthwhile activities in the community, and to tend to the family relationship as Marcia and I grow older. We need to care for one another and help one another and adjust to one another as we encounter physical and mental and memory and other kinds of problems. The "what am I here for" question comes to mind more often. Why did I come into this room? What was I going to do? Where did I put that thing? And so things that used to come just like that don't come just like that anymore. It relates to driving. You need to drive with extra degrees of care as you get older. You need to work hard. I need to work hard to avoid jumping to conclusions, and then I get the conclusion fixed in my head and do the wrong thing because I got too quick to come into a conclusion. You just got to think things through more carefully. So age begins to take a little bit of toll. Having fun on the tennis court or the golf course, hearing a good performance of many different kinds, a good speech, a good song, a good composition, some kind of quality activity that takes place. Also, sheer elements of where it's fun, it's humorous, everybody's having a great time, everybody's laughing and enjoying one another. Those things I think are important. I think there's an awful lot in the world that is of a cheap shot variety, and I don't much appreciate that in terms of the humor that sometimes comes forward or the emphasis that's put forward on certain things. I think I'm pretty serious. And there are times when it might be nice to be not quite so serious. Gee, I guess when I'm working on something that I believe in, and we're making some progress on that, whatever it is. Oh, when I see what some of the things that have been done by incredible people, things in the artistic world, things in the mental world, things of that the scientists can do in certain areas, things of political achievements of whatever type, as long as they're focused on a useful kind of area. I guess what I'm saying, and again, this is a matter of your view of what's serious and what's not. I have trouble thinking that college sports are very important. I think they're overemphasized compared with everything else. And I really am distressed at the amount of resources that go into and time that goes into focusing on something like who won the football game or who won the basketball game. I think there are lots of more important things to do, and I'd love for that to get more emphasis than it does. I don't think that you have to have 14 or 16 or however many game season we now have in football to have football be an enjoyable activity. But I think what happens when we go overboard in that for charging after the almighty dollar, we're causing young kids to expend too much of their body on the wrong thing. So I wish we could get our priorities in better shape than we do as a society. Well, I got two kinds of fears that I spend time thinking about. One is our nation, and I've been distressed for the past several decades in the direction we've been moving in, and I think we've built a terrible situation where we're very vulnerable. We depend on other people for too much of our energy, and we have a terribly unbalanced budget and a terribly unbalanced set of promises to our people versus what we're going to be able to provide for our people. And we've built ourselves a big hole that we should not have built, but we did it. And we may have made the United States of America rather vulnerable. And what's going on all around us is just emphasizing that. That's one kind of worry. The other kind of worry is we got 13 grandchildren, and these 13 grandchildren are coming of age, and they're coming of age at a time when the economy is troubled, to say the least. And almost by definition, job opportunities are going to be limited compared with what they would have been in other times. And so I worry about the hurdles that our grandchildren are going to have to clear at a time when jobs are short and everybody's competing for jobs. And if you add the two together, that is, the US of A is not doing all that well, in my opinion. And irrespective of that, the economy is making it going to be difficult for folks to have promising careers. I just hope that all of our kids, grandkids, can have rewarding lives. I do recall a time, and maybe this is relevant, I do recall a time I was working at the plant at Houston, and we'd set up an experiment, a control system. And I was totally convinced that this control system was effective and was the right one and would work. But the instrument kept drifting off. And so I'd worked the night shift, and so then I was going home from the night shift, and I said, you know, this has to work. There's no reason why it's not. Stopped at a gas station and got on the phone and called the plant and said, you know, that instrument must be defective in a certain way, which I described. The problem is not the design of the experiment or the control system. The problem is this instrument is defective. And so they went out and checked it out, and that's what happened. Well, there was some kind of inspiration that came to me as I'm driving along. I know this has got to work, and you just have the faith to think it through and say, well, what could be the problem? And the only thing I could come up with was a certain kind of defect, which I described. And anyway, that's turned out to be the situation. I've forgotten the question, so I don't know whether that is a relevant answer. Well, had a younger sister, and the two of us grew up in snowy Cleveland, Ohio. We had loving parents, everything you'd like a parent to be. That is, they were focused on their relationship and on us and helping us try to evolve and learn, and exposed us to a lot of different things. My mom was the youngest of 6 girls, and a number of the other girls were unmarried and in Cleveland at the time, and they exposed us to other aspects of their jobs and enriched our lives. And so we had a good, loving, healthy life, I think. Our parents took us out for lots of trips into the countryside, to parks, and took us on several trips around the countryside to see parts of the world. And they were serious people devoted to important stuff, and were just wonderful parents. Exposed us to things. I can't think of any time that what they had to say wasn't constructive. There was no question about did they love us, no question about did they love one another, no question about were they trying to do the best thing they could for themselves and for us. Dad was the collector of customs, the deputy collector of customs in Cleveland, Ohio, and that's the highest role that he could achieve unless he entered politics, because the guy above him, or the gal above him, was a political appointee. And but he was running the office. I mean, he knew the business. The political appointee didn't. It just was there. They tried to get him to go to Washington. I think he had the feeling, I don't want to go to Washington. I think that politics would control things. I don't want to be part of that. I want to, and so he did not accept a promotion to go to Washington. And I think it was partly oriented to family, partly oriented to ethics, partly oriented to wanting to be in the part of the business that was devoted to facts and solving problems, and didn't want to be in the part of the business that would have been devoted to some kind of political agenda. So wonderful parents. They were blessed with pretty good health until Mom came up with cancer, and she died at age 60. Dad lived on for 25 more years or so. I was sorry to see that for him, because they had a wonderful relationship and deserved to keep going, but didn't. Unusual. Dad married Mom's older sister after she died. And I think part of that was that the older sister had not been married and didn't have a really good retirement situation. And so Mom and Aunt Joanne had known one another for all these years. At that point, 30 or more years. And but it was a very healthy next step for both of them. So both of them would have been on loose lonely months, and they could get together and have a happy life for several more years. And then she died of cancer. But there was always a sense of family and supportiveness and constructive stuff. What makes me happy is whenever some aspect of the human race is acting as it should, and things are going well for the right reason. That's a complicated answer, but I like to see good things happen. And sometimes good things happen for irrelevant reasons. I like to see them happen when people have thought things through and behaved themselves and acted in good, positive ways. So I like it when things work, when the situation is getting better for more people. It's no fun to see people in poverty situations or health situations. Life often is unfair, and people have health problems that they don't deserve and didn't cause. And so then their parents or family members are trying to grapple with that, and it's all unfair. And I hate to see that. No, I love my family. I love God. I love this incredible world we live in. Well, Antarctica was a high spot. Uzbekistan was a high spot. The Silk Road through the ancient travel route between China and Europe. Israel was marvelous. Egypt was incredible. Antarctica was wonderful. Enjoyed Machu Picchu and the Galapagos. Enjoyed going to India. Enjoyed going a combination of Malaysia, Cambodia, and Myanmar. And we saw Angkor Wat. So we've seen a fair number of the very special things. We've seen a lot of Europe and enjoyed that. And of course that resonates with us because that's where our forebears came from. And so Germany, Switzerland, France, special places in our family background, going back decades and centuries. Just the sense that I wanted to understand the world we were living in. I wanted to see more of it, feel more of it. Great ideas came from all these places. Great experiences, great background. It's part of creation, and God did it, and I'd love to understand as much of it as I can. Oh, that the world is a wonderful place, and that there are lots of people that have made incredible contributions over the history. You go back, it's amazing what they did in Egypt. It's amazing what they did in Greece, and so forth. It just is amazing what people have been able to do, and so we're blessed with these monuments, great buildings, great structures, great forms of government. And it's wonderful to see all that stuff. Work hard and work on stuff that is worthwhile. That would be one element. The other element would be love the people around you and try to operate in ways that help them to be most effective, most complete human beings. So to the extent we can, let's help people form as useful a life as they can. I enjoy history very much. I enjoy books on public affairs. I've read a lot about Afghanistan and Iran, given the circumstances that we're living in at the present time. I've enjoyed, one of the best courses I had at college was related to what the course was called The Uses of the Past. It was really a philosophy course, and so we spent time studying what the many philosophers have said about this, that, and the other. And I found it a wonderful course. I've always enjoyed economics, and so I read about economics. I've read a lot of books on the subject, and spent a lot of time thinking about it. And part of my job at one stage was as head of the Economic Evaluation Group at Ethel Corporation. And so I was doing one variety of economics. This was business economics, not macro, not GNP kind of stuff, that sort of thing. But if we made this investment and we had these costs and we sold this much product, where would we be? Would this be a good business for us? So I'd say read an awful lot of things. Again, biography and autobiography. I've enjoyed reading about the incredible people that founded our country, and some of the people that were world changers in other countries. Also enjoyed reading about the Northwest Passage. Wonderful book about Lewis and Clark. Wonderful book about the building of the railroad across the United States of America. Wonderful book about Vanderbilt and what he did in moving from ferries to in Staten Island, New York Harbor, to ultimately trains across the countryside, and how he interacted with, among others, President Lincoln, and kind of changed the economy of the country. Well, you'll have to understand, we go to 3 or 4 movies a year. As growing up, I enjoyed the Westerns, which were adventure stories at that time. John Wayne was a key guy. Gregory Peck was wonderful in some things. Humphrey Bogart was great. Spencer Tracy. I enjoyed historical kinds of movies. Enjoyed comedies. Enjoyed movies that involved travel, and so you'd see other parts of the world. And seeing and getting to know the other parts of the world has been important to me. You ask about books, and some of the books I've read are aimed mainly at teaching about the world, not just us, but the world, and books about the evolution of man. That's a whole separate topic. then the gradations of movement of peoples across the land, and then the political interactions of incredible interactions. We've come a long way in this world, but we still have all kinds of crime and violence. But I have a feeling it's a few notches more gentle than it was in centuries past. I hardly watch TV, but coming along, growing up and with the kids, we used to watch MASH. That was a special kind of program. It had humor. It addressed military issues, human relation issues, and stressed an ability to do an incredibly difficult job well, and then relax from that and have fun. Kind of a well-rounded kind of a picture. Didn't watch and don't watch much television. I've been, I guess as time went by, I got kind of disappointed in television. It's gotten, to my taste, kind of cheap. Focuses on an awful lot of stuff that is not all that important. Every so often, there's a different picture. Every so often it will come out and attack intelligently a difficult issue. And of course, some of the plays coming out of World War II were just incredible. The World War II developed all kinds of special situations, and so it evolved to affecting obviously a lot of authors' lives. And so now you've got South Pacific, which comes out of the war, but you've also got Sound of Music, which kind of came after the war. You've got what's the one about Russia? Topol, Fiddler on the Roof, incredible. And then the one Man from La Mancha. Those were spellbinding to me when they came out, and they still are. I guess the one with Siam involved, the King and I, that was special. As I think about it, those things came along at a point in life when I was learning lots of new stuff and forming my life, my character, my background, my focus. I do less of that now, do a lot of reading, and I hope the reading affects how I live and act and what I focus on. But I like to go at my own pace, and TV and movies, for that matter, make you go at its pace, not your pace. And maybe that's why I like books. I can go at my pace, and I can go back and read it multiple times. And as I go context on things, and I go back and read something from earlier in the book. So I guess, in a sense, I like selfish. I like to run the show in terms of how I'm spending my time. And that's great sometimes, and sometimes it's probably short-sighted. I do try to learn from other people, so I don't mean that I don't listen to other thoughts and other people and other priorities and other approaches. And there were just vignettes that I found very humorous. So I imagine if I watched more TV, I'd see more of those things and I would enjoy them. But again, it becomes a matter of priority. How do you want to spend your time? Mm-hmm. And I want to spend my time my way, not somebody else's way. That's perhaps why we go to a few movies. We read about the movie reviews, and go to the ones that seem to have special merit. And frankly, I don't enjoy the shoot-'em-ups, the constant violence that some movies have in them, and the constant noise background and the constant new technology background. I spent my life working on technology in the chemical business, and I've seen it develop and evolve, and certain new products come on the market that were not there before, and was involved in helping some of that to happen, and that was fun. But the destructiveness and the slam bangingness that goes on is not much fun. And I guess one of the things I object to in the movies is the previews. They're so loud, so boisterous, and I get turned off and say, well, that's 6 or 8 or 9 movies I don't care to go to, and I wish we'd get on with the movie I did care to go to.
What kinds of music do you like? Do you have any favorite musicians?
Oh, I'm basically lean toward the classic side of things. Enjoy symphonic music, enjoy opera. Not a total opera fan, not a consumed by it opera fan, but I do enjoy going to the operatic performances. Never have spent a lot of time on the more popular kind of stuff. Frank Sinatra, I enjoyed, and others of that ilk. And one of the things that I just haven't gotten used to is not being able to understand the words. When I was growing up, you could understand every word. And today, I have trouble catching many of them in most of the music. But music is great. I've enjoyed being in the choir at the church. I enjoy religious music. Spent a lot of years, 30 or 40 years in the choir at our church. My dad got me started in that. He was a bass in our choir in the Methodist Church in Cleveland, Ohio. And somehow he talked me into going up there with him. Don't know quite how it began. And we had a wonderful choir director from the Rensselaer outstanding musical college at the time, still is. And he taught us a lot about singing and about the words and about the pace and about the volume and the gradations. And so I love music, love to perform it. Wish I could play the piano, but I can't. I can sing reasonably, but I'm not anywhere near one who can pick up a piece of book music I've never seen before and just sing it off. But I have enjoyed the camaraderie in the choir as well as the music. The spring is, as you get older, it's glorious with the unfolding of the flowers and the coming of warmer weather. Things are just springing forward, and it's wonderful. Fall, we used to go on rides on Sunday out in the countryside, and we'd go by the apple stands, and we'd buy apples in apple season and other fruit and vegetables in season. And so really, there's a purpose to every season, and it's wonderful. We tend to go on vacations in the spring, and we've often commented, this is the worst time, in a sense, to be leaving Baton Rouge because it's so gorgeous here. But wherever we go, it's going to be gorgeous, and it is. Enjoy, for instance, the mountains in Colorado in the winter, skiing. In the summer, you can't beat a hike in the mountains of Colorado. So it kind of depends on what the time of the year is and where you are and what your objective is. we went to Antarctica and in the summer, their summer, our winter, and it was not bitter. It was cold, but it was not bitter, and it was just wonderful. And it was refreshing to be there. And we'd get in these zodiacs, and so now you're bouncing across the water from the ship to a shore to go see some penguins or walruses or this, that, or the other, or a research station that was down there, or a fishery station that was down there. And these things were just marvelous to see, and the weather added to it. It kind of told snow was everywhere, cold is everywhere, and it's the one thing that wasn't everywhere was disease. That's a great place to go because the bugs can't survive down there, and so it's amazing what people can tolerate. Wet feet, incredible wet feet and wet clothes for day after day after day, and you'd think they'd be dropping like flies, and that's not what happens at all. The survival rate is very, very high, so it's kind of nice to be in a place where there are no bugs, no bacteria to speak of. Well, these days, tennis and golf, they've been hobbies for a long time. In earlier days, when the kids were coming up, we had a sailboat. We all learned to sail. Then we had a power boat. I guess one hobby really was singing in the choir. I thought of it as a religious thing, but also as a hobby. And one of the most relaxing things I would do in a week, because here I am studying this chemical problem or that chemical problem, and going to work on music was totally cleansed you of all that other stuff. As a kid growing up, I enjoyed baseball, enjoyed touch football, enjoyed basketball, ice skating, enjoyed skiing. There were a lot of years when the key hobby would be skiing and hiking out in those Colorado mountains. So it's changed over the years. Always been reading, always been that side of things. Reading books, reading magazines, keeping up with the world, and also trying to reach more dimensions than you can. So it wasn't all technical reading. Lots of different kinds of reading to expose you to some other aspect of life that you otherwise wouldn't see. Some of it non-fiction, a lot of it non-fiction, but some fiction. And fiction, of course, can take you places that, in terms of emotions and understanding circumstances that you probably won't otherwise experience. Well, my interests have, in a sense, always been trying to contribute to making the United States of America system work from a political point of view, from an economic point of view, from a freedom point of view, from a equity for everybody kind of approach, view. So, paying attention to world affairs is important. Paying attention to economic affairs is important. Looking at the political issues and try to separate the wheat from the chaff. But ultimately, trying to help this thing work. When I was a kid, I couldn't complete a sentence at one stage of my life, my friends told me, without using the word actually in every sentence. And so at that point, I guess actually was my favorite word. I don't know that I've had a favorite word since. Well, Marcia probably is more tuned in on those than I am. So
Well, some things my dad says are like boner bump.
Oh, yeah. Well, I just take two words and put them together. They don't make any sense. But typically, they're endearing words of one kind or another. And so it's not just busy our dog, it's busy Lou, or it's this or that other term of endearment.
Buzzwump.
Yeah, we got a lot of nicknames for every member of the family. I guess I can't remember all the things we called our kids as they were coming up, but they weren't always Andrea and Kenneth and Philip. Buzzwump, that was one. Hey Buzzwump, what are you doing? Or what are you up to? How are you doing? There was a time when people couldn't complete a sentence without using a word, and I can't remember what it was. But it just swept the globe. Well, and one that I detest now is, you know what I mean. So a person starts out, you know what I mean. No, I don't really know what you mean. Get on with it. I like positive words more than negative words, and I don't know what to say beyond that. I think I'm an optimist, and I think I'm constructive, and that's where I try to head. Well, I guess it would be to be about 3 or 4 notches smarter than I am, and then to use that smartness to change the world some way or other. Well, these days I love the little squeak that an animal makes, a toy makes when our busy finds it and squeaks it and carries on with it. I enjoy that noise thoroughly. I enjoy, when I was on the school board, one of the things that I really enjoyed was going to the schools. I did it. We had 100 schools, and I went to all of the schools each year. And I always would enjoy coming up to the school and hearing the kids out playing. The noise of these kids running around and jumping and carrying on was a wonderful one to me. Some of the incredible sounds that are made in various musical compositions are marvelous. The sound of running water in the right circumstance is great. If that's because the pipe is leaking, it's not so good, but if it's a babbling brook and you're out on a camping trip and you're happy to be out there, oh, that's wonderful. Oh, it's been so long since I spent time reading that stuff that I guess what I've come to believe is that a lot of the philosophers came up with systems that provide wonderful insights, but also don't have all the answers. So, no, I don't. I don't really have a favorite philosopher. I enjoy George Will and his contributions day in and day out. Well, he doesn't make a contribution every day. He makes one every 3 or 4 times a week. But anyway, he's a wonderful thinker, and he thinks several notches more deeply than just about anybody I come across. Oh, sure. I'm sure there's not a thing that I've done that I couldn't have done better. As a husband, as a parent, as a grandparent, as a great-grandparent, as a school board member, as a chemical engineer. You're never totally at the top of your game, always. Well, just the Lord's given me another day to live, and I need to put it to a good purpose. Just try to do things that are useful. Try to develop my own capacity. In other words, my own knowledge level and my own knowledge level in a specific area. Can't contribute if you don't know what you're doing. So you got to spend some time getting yourself in shape to be able to contribute. And you got to spend some time having good health such that you can function out there, meet with people and do things. I'm working on something called health centers in schools right now, and we're trying to build health centers that will provide our public school kids with better preventative care than they've been getting. So I'm working on that area right now.